Futures, oh, what a turnaround. What a delight to see. Earlier this morning, Dow was down 400. Everything else was way down as well. That's turned around. The Dow is actually up 20. S&P down only 10, but the Nasdaq is off 100 points. Now, today, Zelensky meets Trump at the White House. Ukraine wants Tomahawk missiles. Meanwhile, Trump says he'll meet with Putin in a couple of weeks. Watch this.
I think we're going to have this one done hopefully soon, but I'll be meeting him probably over the next 2 weeks. I thought it was a very good phone call. I thought very productive. But I'll be meeting with President Putin, and we'll make a determination. Tomorrow I'm meeting with President Zelensky, and I'll be telling him about the call. I mean, we have a problem. They don't get along too well, those two, and it's sometimes tough to have meetings.
Those two don't get along too well. I guess that's the understatement of the decade, isn't it? General Jack Keane joins me now. Look, General, lots of action around Ukraine. Are we on the verge of at least maybe a ceasefire?
Well, we don't know, but certainly something on that phone call has persuaded the president that it's worth his time to try to get there. I mean, he fully is aware of the fact that Putin has made a lot of promises and he hasn't kept any of them. He hasn't been willing to compromise, actually, whatsoever. And indeed, the president knows that Putin has escalated the war against Ukraine, principally on civilians, and he expanded it in terms of military incursions into NATO countries. And that's kind of where we are. And here we have Zelensky. He wants to get some Tomahawk weapons. And the reason for this is that he needs the range. It's a range issue. The weapons he does have from us and the Europeans cannot reach the locations where the weapon systems and the airplanes are doing the most damage to his civilian population and to his energy infrastructure. What am I talking about? Well, one, a manufacturing factory that produces the Shahed drones that the Ukrainians gave to the Russians and manufactured, and now they have close to 20,000 North Koreans working in a major factory that does this. These are the drones, the killer drones that come in 500 and 600 groups that we've seen night after night. And then the bombers are out of reach as well that deliver the cruise missiles and also glide bombs that are killing the civilians and destroying the energy infrastructure. So what Zelensky wants to do, and actually use the offensive capability that the Tomahawk weapons give him as a defensive weapon to protect the civilians that he has in his own country. That is really what has taken place here and why he has a sense of urgency. You know, President Trump understands all of that, and he certainly knows what military leverage is. We've just seen him use that quite decisively and quite successfully in the Middle East. So there's something persuading the president that this time it could be different. The good news is Rubio, Secretary of State, and Lavrov, Minister of Foreign Affairs for Russia, are going to meet next week. And I would assume if Lavrov doesn't come forward, Stuart, with something on the table that's real here, then it's not worth the president's time to go all the way to Budapest and get another empty promise from Putin.
Sounds like the Tomahawk missiles are a game changer because Putin's not doing well domestically with his economy and his supply of energy. These Tomahawks could really change the picture. But my question would be, if we deploy Tomahawks and Ukraine uses them, what will Putin do then?
Well, he threatens some kind of escalation. But after all, he escalated with his own cruise missiles. He's escalated with intermediate-range ballistic missiles. And he's been firing on Ukraine these kind of weapon systems, you know, since the war began. And he says this is an escalation. How can it possibly be an escalation when we're just giving Zelensky the means to defend his civilian population better than what he currently has? And he threatens that Putin will escalate. Well, we've seen the evidence of that. That has never happened. Biden held back capability time and time again and then reluctantly gave it to the Ukrainians. Putin was always waving tactical nuclear weapons in their faces and forced Biden to take a knee. President Trump sees through that. He knows that there's no major escalation coming from Putin here. He's certainly not going to use nuclear weapons and go to war with all of Europe over Ukraine. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. Trump issued this warning on Truth Social, quote, if Hamas continues to kill people in Gaza, which was not the deal, we will have no choice but to go in and kill them. General, American troops, they're not going to disarm Hamas. The president said so. The Arab peacekeepers, their soldiers, they're not shown up yet. They're not in place. That leaves Israel. They are the only people who can disarm Hamas at this point. And that would mean the war starts again, right?
Yeah. And remember, at the press conference in the White House, when President Trump with Prime Minister Netanyahu announced the deal that we saw take place with the release of the hostages, but also they gave some of the outline of what a phase 2 would look like. And that meant Hamas would disarm, which is the issue now, and also no longer govern, and we would transition to a Palestinian form of government and an international stabilization force to maintain order. That's kind of the construct. And what we face and what was said at that press conference is if Hamas reneges on that deal and doesn't disarm, then he would support, the president said this, he would support Prime Minister Netanyahu going back in to force their disarmament. So certainly that is something that's there and certainly would be used if necessary. Now, everybody's hoping that isn't necessary. Right. But listen, peace enforcement forces or the International Stabilization Force, they usually don't work if one side doesn't want to cooperate. And that is the evidence from the past. So, yeah, you're probably right. The only thing that would disarm Hamas would be the Israelis, and that would be restarting the conflict again.
Something's going on overseas this weekend. I do believe it. General, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week. Thanks a lot, sir.